And you don't know what you got, but you got it at your fingertips. You got it in you. You got it in you. When the lights go out and leave you standing in the dark.
It's a good one. And I haven't done one of these for a long time. I'm telling you, the hair and makeup is getting to be a real imposition. As it turns out, my hairdresser won't be reopened until the 1st of June, even though haircuts are allowed. So you're going to have to deal with this. I'm going to have to deal with this for at least another couple of weeks. I don't think I'll be the first person through the door. It is May the 19th. Somehow, it is already May the 19th. We're what, a month out of summer officially? We've had some summer-like days. We've had some days in the mid-20s. Beautiful days. Days that might not even be matched by July or August in Vancouver. It's episode 58, and that was Got It In You, the acoustic version by Banners, which is one of my faves. I'm going to open with some commentary about what I think is an inevitability, that is the second wave of infections. We just simply have to ask ourselves what's changed, and the answer to that question is really very little. We don't have a vaccine. I will talk a little bit about the vaccine, the hopes of a Moderna vaccine. Of course, there are something like 100 efforts globally to solve that problem. But we don't have one, and we don't have a strong antiviral, so nothing has changed. We know that warm temperatures don't do much for this because Brazil is exploding horrifically. It was a subject of my update back on the 11th, so it's been, 8 days since my last update. That's the longest gap that I've had in my updates for a long time. So I think that we should just use logic and come to the pretty obvious conclusion that there will be a second wave. In fact, that subject to the availability of a vaccine, that there could be a second and third and fourth wave. And the only way to manage between these waves is track trace. There's a tech piece to that. And of course, social distancing is kind of like the blunt force instrument, regardless of the economic impact, that we're going to have to go back to, because what else do we have? Unless we go for the slow burn herd immunity approach. But even the slow burn herd immunity approach will still require several waves of social isolation. That's why people are talking about September for go back to school. But if that's when a second wave is cresting, which is kind of around the time a second wave would crest, if you think about how long it took the first wave to crest from November to like March, April, that's like a 3-4 month gap. If we follow a similar course and we're just starting to ramp back up now, let's say, then we could expect that August will be like back to lockdown conceivably. I don't think people are thinking about it this way. Even though this is say the first intermission, or the gap between the bottom of the first and the top of the second, that would using sports analogies suggest there'd be 9 waves. I'm not sure we'll have nine innings or 9 waves, but it could very well be more than 3. So let's not go with hockey periods. It could be more than 4. Let's not go with football quarters. But you get my point. There are 70 cases of COVID-19 immediately within the incubation period following the reopening of French schools, right? That's the anecdote that supports this notion. Opening schools is not the most efficient way to avoid a second wave. It's a pretty efficient way to guarantee one. There are a few other high-risk things. Word of the day. Man, I'm going to say this wrong if I don't remind myself how it's said, so let's go to the tape on this. It is said like this. Simulacrum. It's let's call it an unsatisfactory imitation or a cheap ripoff of something, like a bland simulacrum of American soul music. And even though the primary definition is a small scale, is an example of which is a small scale simulacrum of a skyscraper. In other words, almost like not an effigy, but like a diorama, a small scale version of something in the physical world, or a cheap ripoff. That's a good word. And it's also gotten quite a bit more popular, become quite a lot more popular since sort of 1970. It's had a popularity surge, this word, in the popular press, or at least in the corpus of words that are tracked by Google, which figures most of them. News. Shine comes off the Moderna vaccine news. I don't know if you guys have been following this, but yesterday it was big news. Their stock surged enormously. But there's an issue with the fact that a public company that's small, that has and that is an issue that has announced that they're going to sell more of their equity, hasn't released a peer-reviewed paper on this. They have not yet brought a vaccine to market. Historically, they're using the mRNA technique, which has never been successful yet. They have a variety of vaccines in their pipeline. They don't publish work in scientific journals. This is a huge red flag. What is known about these guys is exclusively through press releases. Well, again, it's not enough to generate confidence within the scientific community, and that has to be the test. The quote here is, "My guess is that their numbers are marginal, or they would say more," echoing a suspicion that others have about some of the company's other work. I do think it's a bit of a concern they haven't published the results of any of their ongoing trials that they mention in their releases. They have not published any of that. Still, she characterized herself as cautiously optimistic based on what the company said. Okay, so you can be cautiously optimistic, but if you have really, really good data, you're going to publish it, right? Seems pretty obvious. Picture of the day, I don't know when this was, some time ago. Emily and I had another experience with Emily like this today at a restaurant. I might have gone to a restaurant with Emily today. It was pretty special. But my positive life changer of the day was yesterday, 2 days ago. Emily and I finished 9th and 10th, respectively, in a serious Zwift race. She pushed 4.1 watts per kilo, which is A-class racing. She only just needs to get used to racing strategy and sticking with the right pelotons. And I was in the chase group for most of this race. I actually led it for a while. Her raw power places her clearly in the league of entry-level women pro criterion racers, which is phenomenal. And she's stronger than me. She makes more power per watt than I do, and probably always will, which is just shocking to me. It's kind of hard to imagine. And she finished behind me by 1 place, but would have easily been able to win this race, or beat me at least, if she had simply come out of the gate a little harder. But it just blows me away that I have a daughter who's 14 years old that can race at this level, and at this quality, and it loves it as much as she does. It's stiff, pretty high pressure competition, and she's crushing it. So that's definitely a life changer of the day. None of this would have happened if I hadn't started racing e-racing road bikes indoors like I have since my good friend and business partner Brent Woolman turned me on to the idea of doing it. And that is my update for May the 19th. It's great to finally see you guys again, or be doing this for you guys again. Love to hear your comments and feedback, and look forward to speaking with each of you guys soon.